Did you know that the British banned yoga in India during their rule? It is not even a joke if this sounds bizarre and downright stupid. The West is so obsessed with yoga for the past few decades that it feels too ironic to be true. Even the royals swear by it now, although their ancestors were, quite frankly, threatened by it. Sweet, innocent yoga scared the British colonizers so much that they banned it. If you want to learn self-yoga, you'd automatically search tutorials on YouTube, and we kid you not, you'll be bombarded with white, skinny women standing tall in warrior pose. But that's not what yoga even represents. First, they ban it, then they got obsessed with it, and now they present yoga as a whitewashed form of physical exercise that will take away all your stress. We smell cultural appropriation here, but that's for later. Let's dig into the British colonizers, one of the many embarrassing moments in history. At first, the British East India Company banned yoga in India on the pretext of black magic. Let us say it again for those in the black. They believed yoga was black magic, you guys. A moment of silence for those witty minds that worked overtime to presume this. And that was just the tip of the iceberg, as there are many strange reasons for banning it. Get your popcorn ready. The British colonizers condemned the teaching of yoga because they considered it a sexual practice instead of a spiritual one. They found yoga asanas to be vile and vulgar. I don't even know where to get started with this one. We're talking about pre-independence Indian times, right? Hindus who predominantly wore saris, dhotis, kurtas, etc. Who did yoga to connect deeply with their soul and surroundings? Who consider religion above it all, and to date aren't as cool with the open sexualization of people or even the word sex. It's almost like they had to say something as close to a logical reason as possible to ban it. I'm sure it would have impacted the upper-class Hindus' reputation back in the day. Yoga does involve twisting the body and enhancing flexibility, but at its core, it is a deeply spiritual practice, which isn't exactly rocket science, but the British oppressors seem to have missed that. Something tells us that the British were threatened by a practice they didn't just understand or could perform themselves. Try to place yourself in those times, where you may come across a sadhu, tapasvi, or ascetic who dressed differently and is practicing yoga or meditation, probably unbothered about the oppression. And then you see hatha yogis, especially those who practice kalari, making them great at fights and combats. They were strong, operated in groups, and practiced difficult forms of yoga. Their physical strength probably rubbed the Britishers' fragile ego the wrong way. So, they considered their practices as tantric spiritualism and viewed them as an outcome of the backward Dark Ages. They started despising and controlling it, and even influenced the upper Hindu classes against it. They packaged hatha yogis as poor, homeless, problematic, and parasitic. It's safe to think that it could be their insecurity arising out of not knowing what yoga could manifest as. Were they threatened that yoga would bestow some kind of mystical powers to people that could be used in the war for freedom? A hidden Hogwarts-like community for yoga that was going to defend India against the British colonizers? The British minds back then gave all Muggles a seriously bad name. But, you see, Hindus tried to keep calm. The freedom fighters even explained to them the rationale and beliefs of yoga. The British, who somehow managed to rule so many countries, still deemed yoga as unscientific, irrational, and make-believe. They really thought Indians had the time to play these games while they had a country to free. The colonizers refused to believe in meditative powers of yogis and therefore placed a ban on the practice of yoga in India. Of course, a shift happened back then to improve the relationship between the West and yoga. When colonization of India shifted from the British East India Company to the actual government of Britain, there was a change in the views of traditional Indian culture. The British began focusing too much on the Indian culture, which spurred a liking of yoga in Western cultures. But it was more of a reaction to what Indians were doing to put yoga in front of the world. Swami Vivekananda, a celebrated Hindu monk and freedom fighter, pioneered the spread of yoga to the West. In 1893, When Swami Vivekananda addressed the Parliament of Religions in Chicago, he emphasized the importance of Indian traditions and rituals.
Sisters and brothers of America, it fills my heart with joy unspeakable to rise in response to the warm and cordial welcome which you have given us. I am proud to belong to a religion which has taught the world both tolerance and universal acceptance. We believe not only in universal toleration, but we accept all religions as true.
While the West had always been hesitant to consider Eastern spiritual practices as credible, Vivekananda's speech encouraged them to consider Indian spirituality. Decades ahead, yoga gurus such as Paramahansa Yogananda traveled the world in the 1900s to further the goal of making yoga legitimate, followed, and eventually loved. Now that we've talked about a bizarre fact from yoga's history, let's also touch upon the debates around the colonization of yoga. Have you noticed it? In simple terms, the profound practice of yoga has been reduced to an image of a skinny, white person dressed in modern or ethnic Indian clothing saying namaste. Many have called out this narrow and shallow version of modern yoga as cultural appropriation and colonization of yoga. They have reduced it to physical exercise, while yoga is a deep spiritual practice that connects you with your inner self and surroundings in the most profound manner. Even the chanting of the word Om has a spiritual meaning. Saying Om or Namaste doesn't automatically make you a yogi or guru or a deeply spiritual person. Sadly, the colonization of yoga has turned the world's focus towards its application and appearance of it. What they sell in the West as modern yoga seems like a dumbed-down version of an ancient science that literally liberated many enlightened beings. Yes, yoga helps with stress and anxiety, but it's about time we stop reducing its benefits to these. It is for people of any shape or size, and not just skinny, ultra-flexible people, which is what's often shown while promoting it. That's not the goal, you guys. And what's with the obsession with white people wearing Indian ethnic clothes with chants printed on them and Rajaksha necklace around their necks? Does that automatically make them better with yoga? Why are we impressed with them starting the class with Namaste? We can go on and on about everything that's wrong. This begs the question, has yoga been colonized to make it more acceptable? Despite its wide popularity, application, and undeniable benefits to everyone, we need yoga practitioners to educate the masses on the origins of yoga, the 8 limbs of yoga, goals besides physical fitness, and the rationale for doing any asana, pranayam, or chanting. Let us not remix a science that started with the very dawn of civilization, like we do old Bollywood songs. It may sound good for the first few times, but if you listen closely, the lyrics have lost their true meaning. What are your thoughts about it? Let us know in the comments. If you found this video interesting, do subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications for our latest.